Okay, this is a test review for chapter 7 all the way to chapter 11. So I will try to quickly go over the major concepts that will be covered on tomorrow's tests. So there are three major biomes, three major types of biomes that we have. We have tropical rainforest, we have grassland, we have rainforest or forest, we have grassland, and we have desert. But depending on the temperature, we have different regions. We have tropical region, we have cold region, and we also have temperate regions. Therefore, we use the climate graphs that we did earlier, and also shown in chapter 7 of your textbook, to go over the similarities and differences of different biomes. So if you look at tropical, you can see that they are the average temperature, it's always at about 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, and because it's very close to the equator, the temperature change is minimal. And if you go on to a temperate region, you can see the summer temperature, it's pretty high, but the temperature fluctuation is much greater than tropical region. The winter temperatures are much lower, okay, very close to closer or crossing just crossing the freezing point. And for cold region, you can see half of the year, or at least some of the good significant amount of the year, the places will have a temperature below freezing point. Okay, now to tell whether it's forest or grassland, we look at the precipitation. So what you can see here is that the grassland, they have relatively less rainfall. You can see right here for tropical grassland, savanna, they have much less rainfall. Now you may say temperate grassland and temperate deciduous forests, they are pretty similar, but if you look carefully, you can see a few months for the temperate grassland, they have minimal rainfall. Okay, now chances are I would not give you both of these two, the coniferous forest or Arctic tundra, side by side for you to, or would not give this to you to compare, because it's just hard to compare. Okay, for desert, you can see the rainfall amount is extremely little, close to none for many of the months. Okay, tropical region, high temperature, temperate region, touching the freezing point, and cold region, having a few months having temperature below freezing point. Now, one key thing about deserts is that they are very fragile because of due to the lack of moisture, and sometimes due to the lack of moisture and warm temperature, the nutrient recycling is extremely slow. And so, if there's any devastation done to the environment, then it would be hard to recover. Okay. Now, another thing about forest is that if we go back to the first to this slide, now you can see here tropical rainforests, a lot of biodiversity, okay, fast nutrient recycling. So now, and also warm temperature, lots of moisture. And there's one interesting fact about rainforest is that tropical rainforest particularly is that the limiting factor for tropical rainforest is the nutrients in the soil. Now, it may not make sense at the beginning, but here's the explanation: that the nutrient, it's in short supply because the nutrients are quickly absorbed by the vegetations. So the soil in tropical rainforest, they are very depleted with nutrients. And later on we'll talk about tree cutting, and this is even worse, because that's how deforestation will lead to difficulty in regrowing vegetation due to the lack of nutrients. Okay. All right, now there's another biome. It's called chaparral, and chaparral. It's now the temperature fluctuation is minimal, but if you look carefully, it's on the cooler side, 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, which is about 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, and a key feature about chaparral is that the summer months are usually pretty dry. Okay, it's pretty dry, and if you look at the look at this map, right, look at this picture right here. This is the Los Angeles wildfire that's happening right now as we speak. 2017 December, early December, and if you look at the Los Angeles temperature graph, you can see the summer months are very, very dry, and even with the high precipitation months like January and February, they only have like 5 inches total, so it's really dry. Okay. Now, another thing about going higher latitude and talking about mountain is that they are very similar. As we go from equator area all the way to polar region, okay, so we can see a change in temperature, that's for sure, and also the temperature, well, along with temperature, the precipitation will also decrease as we move to polar regions. This is very similar to moving high up in the mountain. That as we move higher, the temperature becomes cooler, and also precipitation becomes less. So now, what's the point of this comparison? The point of this comparison is that mountains are very, very important for sustaining biodiversity, because within a single location, you have a variety of habitats. And later on, we will talk about mining, and when we mine our mountains, getting our natural resources, that's extremely detrimental to the biodiversity. Okay. Now, rain shadow effect. You can see there's a Rockies right here, and now you can see a lot of rainfall in the Pacific front of the Rockies, and then the wind is coming this way, so you can see the rainfall coming, dumping it in front of the Rockies, and then the dry air going through the Rockies, making it very dry. So you can see these minimal precipitation behind the Rockies in the states of Nevada and New Mexico, Arizona, okay, and only to Texas that we start to see increasing moisture. And then moving to the east, then we also have a lot of moisture as well. We have a lot of moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the reason why we always see dry area, like think about the 30 degrees north, we see Sahara Desert. The 30 degrees south, like Australia, the outback, we always see these dried regions. The Middle East, also in the north 30 degrees. So why is that? It's because that we have some circulations, global air circulations, and we have names for these. We call these Hadley cells. There are the two right next to the equator, and then we have the ferrocell and the polar cells. Now, we only need to know the Hadley cells, and what's very important to know is that when the airs are descending, they are the dry air, so that the dry air that's cooler that descends, and as a result, we see the formation of tropical rainforest. I mean the deserts in the 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south region. Okay. Another key factor to affect global climate is that thermohaline circulation. This is the circulation that goes over the entire world, the ocean. Now, we will talk more about this circulation when we deal with the climate change later on in the second semester. So for now, just know that there's a big circulation around the oceans. And if you watch the day after tomorrow, then you would know what's going on with this circulation. Now let's move on to the mass extinction. We spend quite a lot of time talking about extinction. Currently we are saying that we have our sixth mass extinction is caused by human, and we are so alarmed by the current extinction or mass extinction. It's because the current extinction rate is a lot faster than the background extinction rate. It's about 100 times to 1,000 times faster. Now, the background extinction rate is where the species will naturally go extinct, which is about 1 in a million species per year. And now we are going much faster than that rate. And also, don't forget, this is also a positive feedback loop. That means if the more species go away, it leads to even more species going extinct. Don't forget HIPPO, the acronym for these 6 letters. I'm not going to go over these. We have gone over these a few times already in class. There are 3 levels of extinction. We have the local extinction, where you can no longer find the species at one particular location. So if you look at the blue whale, it can no longer be found near the Pacific in the Pacific Ocean near Japan due to whaling. And a more severe level of extinction, it's called ecological extinction. It's where the species can no longer perform its ecological function. So sea otter is one example. You can read that. If you can pause and read the description. We talked about that in class already. Same thing right here. We talk about this in class. How sea otter can indirectly help us to regulate climate by keeping the kelp forest healthy, by removing the sea urchins. And then ultimately we have the biological extinction. It's where the species can no longer be found alive. It's completely gone. So golden toad is one famous example. The poster child for biological extinction. Okay. So what makes some species very vulnerable to endangerment and species extinction? Okay, so if they are not reproducing fast, then it's very easy for them to go extinct, because if the rate of killing them is faster than their reproduction rate, then it becomes a net loss. If they have a very specialized niche, meaning that they cannot move to other places, then it's also very dangerous for them to survive, for them to stay alive. Narrow distribution, it's when they have limited range of habitat, and similar to the specialized niche, they cannot go to or migrate to other places. Large territories, it's when they have a huge range, but that makes them very easily discovered by humans. So that's another risk for species extinction. Okay, commercially valuable, that's if they can be killed and be sold for money. And fixed migratory pattern, it's when they have easily predictable path for migration, like sea turtle. Okay, this is their migration route in the Pacific, so easily trap them and capture them. And species feeding at high trophic level, they tend to be K species. They have smaller population and smaller population growth rate, okay, or reproduction rate. Okay, so to protect species, we have some laws, regulations, and international treaties. We have gone over 3 major international treaties in class. We talk about the CITES, the organization that try to prohibit international trade. And by prohibiting international trade, the unintended consequence was that it created a black market that makes the endangered species more expensive, which leads to more killing of the endangered species, because people are, especially the poor people, they are willing to risk violating the law in exchange of getting money for their own survival. So that's the flaw of CITES. Okay. Also, we talk about Convention on Biological Diversity. They have a lot of goals, and they cannot really implement all of the goals. There are a lot of delays. There are conflicts between governments, and the most important problem is that we are not part of the treaty. We did not ratify the treaty. So, without our leadership, their effort it's close to meaningless. We also have the Endangered Species Act. It's the legislation that focused on saving endangered species by creating these two agencies, the National Marine Fisheries Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. These are the well-known examples of under the Endangered Species Act: the bald eagle, gray wolf in the Yellowstone, American alligator in the south, bald eagles in the west coast. So these are the good examples, but the problem is that the species that are protected are much less than what need to be protected. So the effectiveness of species protection is very limited. We have other strategies such as egg pooling. The eggs are sometimes very fragile, and it's risky of being stolen by other species, by humans or other species. So what we do is we pull out the eggs and we hatch them in captivity, and then after it's being hatched, then we will release them back to the wild. The drawbacks are that we may not have enough funding, and this may enrage the individual, the species. Okay, we have captive breeding. The captive breeding, it's to bring the endangered species into captivity, and then we will breed them and release the offspring into the wild. Money is always a problem, but we do have a very successful example, which is the California condor. You can see the graph right here that the population in the wild was very, very limited, and it even went to zero because all the condors, they were captured and breed under the captive breeding program. And then you can see the increasing number of the condor in captivity, and at the same time we are also releasing them to the wild and let them reproduce in the wild, and you can see the rebound of the condor population. Now, another thing it's that when there are places with a lot of endemic species, also with very rapid rates of extinction, we call them hotspots. And you can see the map right here. Many hotspots are either islands, coastal areas, they're usually in warmer regions, coastal areas, yeah. So now we're not going to go into the list, but this is where we see these hotspots. Okay, we're going to talk about forest here. There are three types of forest. We have the old growth forest. I'll show you some pictures. Second growth forest and tree plantation. Let's talk about forest, because we will also talk about wildfire in a moment. So we have different layers. We have the emergent layer. That's where the new layer, the future newer canopy. Okay, so it's evolving. Then we have the canopy. It's where most of the tree tops are available. Okay, the competition. It's there's a lot of competition of sunlight in the understory. Okay, and a lot of insects here. Okay. And then you have the shrub layer and the ground layer. Okay, now the ground layer, it's important here because later on when we talk about wildfire, we will look into the leaf litter that's on the ground layer that may help burning and how it leads to a more wildfire. Okay, so if you look at an old growth forest, you can see the comparison of the people in the picture and also the tree size. Old growth forests, they are very, very old. They are not disrupted, and they are humongous. They are not the majority portion of the forest. They are they are very valuable timber, and that's why they're being cut by developers and lumber company to get the wood. It's about 36% of the world forest. Okay, if you go to Sequoia National Park, you can see a lot of big redwood trees. And in order to protect them, we have designated areas such as national parks to protect these trees. Okay, now the problem with national parks is that they're getting too popular. Too many people are going there, and therefore we have a lot of pollution. And also bringing in invasive species too. Now, if you look at the picture of second growth forest, you can see the picture here. The tree trunk is a lot slimmer. Okay, they are the majority of the world's forest, either due to deforestation by humans or natural disaster. Okay, the age it's a lot younger than the old growth forest. It's between for this one second growth forest, secondary forest. It's only 100 to 500 years of age. Now, and then we have tree plantation. This is where we are seeing not much of a biodiversity because we're cutting down trees for a particular usage. For example, Christmas trees. Okay, that's how we get Christmas trees or fresh Christmas trees sustainably, and it's cost more than the plastic ones. Okay, so genetic diversity, it's very limited. Biodiversity is very limited, not a lot. And the way it works is that it takes about, there are different stages, and the whole cycle takes about 30 years. 30 years, and they would do selective cutting in the middle of the cycle to make sure to remove some weak trees or sick trees. Okay, you can see the ecological and economic services provided by the forest. You can read that by yourself. Okay, there are 3 ways to remove trees from a forest. This is called clear cutting, when there is no selection. We just cut down all the trees. So you can see many trees are being cut here. This is the easiest, and it's also the most devastating method because we are exposing a lot of soil into the air. There's no cover, and as a result, it's very hard for vegetations to regrow, and especially when they get all dried up. Strip cutting, it's better. Strip cutting is to cut a specific strip of land so that it's not, so that it's still being covered by surrounding trees. Not so devastating, but still, it's equally to the land could get drier, and the trees could die easily. Okay, the surrounding trees could die easier as a result. And then we have selective cutting. You can see on the picture here, not all the trees are being cut. It's not like a large area. They will only select trees with a particular age, that older age, that will be good for cutting, and leaving the younger trees there so that they can grow and mature. This is more costly because it's harder for them to transfer the wood from these environments, because you cannot have a big machinery to cut these trees, so costlier. Now let's talk about wildfire. We have 3 types of fire. We have surface fire. It's just burning on the surface. Now, if it's just surface fire, then usually it's not that much of a risk. It becomes a higher risk if the surface fire continues to burn, and then some vines or some roots, the air roots, they got burned, and then the fire gets to the crown or the canopy level of the trees, then it gets a lot worse. Okay, now surface fire, it happens because there could be a lot of leaf litter on the ground, and therefore it could lead to easy burning. The cause could be natural, it could be human-made, it could be because of lightning. Okay, this is the worst kind of fire. It's called crown fire. It's when the canopy it's being burned, and it spreads very quickly. This is a picture of wait, hold on. I thought there was a picture. Oh, it was earlier, the chaparral. We have wildfire in California right now, and that's Crown Fire, and the wind that's blowing near the scene of the wildfire could be very, very strong. Last week we reported they recorded hurricane force wind near the wildfire site. So that's the danger of Crown Fire. It spreads very, very quickly. And also, it becomes a positive feedback loop that it continues to suck in fresh air as it burns, and that's where the wind comes from. And as a result, it just keeps on burning more trees. So we have Smokey the Bear because we would like to stop the wildfire. Now, at the beginning of the Smokey Bear campaign, we would like to stop all the fire. And then what we realize is that when we stop all the fire gets, the wildfire that we have, it's even stronger. And then we study more about the wildfire, and then we realized that that we actually have to remove a lot of fuel. You can see the dry grass right here. These are the perfect fuel for wildfire. And what we do here is that during winter time, when it's more when it could be more humid and definitely lower temperature, we have these prescribed fires so that we can remove the fuel from the ground, so that it will prevent further burning or like a large scale wildfire from happening. Okay. Another kind of forest that we talked about in class is called mangrove forest. They are particularly special because they have a filtration system that only takes in the water but keep the salts out. The roots are penetrating through the soil and the water and can provide shelter for juvenile fish, okay, for protection from predators. And the root system can also help shift the sediments, or put the sediments on the ground, and also converting CO2 into peat that would be stored very well underneath the mangrove trees. The problem with mangrove trees or mangrove forest future is that they are being displaced by shrimp farms and aquaculture. So, and their displacement rate it's even faster than tropical rainforest. So this is the reason of concern on mangrove forest. Bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Okay, so when we talk about pollution, we talk about this. You heard about this in the documentary for whales, The Cove, and let's talk about it here. When we burn coal, we put mercury into the atmosphere. Okay, we put mercury into the atmosphere, and then mercury will eventually come down to the water source, and then at the lake, or eventually in the ocean. Now, what you see here is that in the water, it's only 1 times of the it's only 1 times of the toxin, and then it goes up more in phytoplankton, zooplankton. So at every level that we go up in the trophic level in the food chain, you can see a higher mercury level. Okay, so if we eat these primary or secondary consumers, or even tertiary consumers, then it gets a lot more toxic. Okay, this is another picture showing you the same thing. Okay, ppm it's concentration unit. Okay, for toxins. Now this would give you a good look on what kind of fish is good, or shellfish included. Like they are low risk of being toxic, and then there are other fish that are very toxic. So when you go to a supermarket, make sure you know what fish to buy and what fish not to buy. Okay, now freshwater, we have lakes, right? And Lake Chad, it's a location in Africa. You can see the map right here. Lake Chad was shared by 4 countries. We have Nigeria, Chad, and Cameroon, and it was one of the biggest lakes, freshwater lakes in the world. And then you can see the rapid depletion of Lake Chad from 1963 all the way to 2007. So the key reason there are multiple reasons for this kind of drying. First, we have shifting climate pattern that the region gets drier. But even with that reason, it's not possible for such rapid drying or depletion of fresh water. So what happened was that the people in these countries, they would like to develop their own agricultural practice, their farms, and they divert water from Lake Chad. And then what happens is that the the water canals that are used to divert the water from Lake Chad, it's being they're not sealed with concrete, meaning that as water is being transferred, much of the water is being lost to soil. So in terms of percentage, if you start from the lake as 100%, less than 10% water actually get to the destination. So this is how bad the irrigation project was, and this is the this was the leading reason for the depletion of Lake Chad. So we have different fishing methods. We talked about that in class extensively already. We have bottom trawling. We have bottom trawling. It's very good for catching a lot of fish, but it will hurt the sea bottom habitat as it drags through the seabed. Okay. And also we have long lining. Okay, it could be very long, about 100 miles. And with lots of hooks, and there's a lot of bycatches with long lining and bottom trawling. And then we have purse seine. It's good for catching surface dwelling fish. Okay, so it's good if you just want to catch the fish near the surface. And also, oh, there's supposed to be a drift netting. I forgot to put a picture here. I'm sorry. Drift netting. The net can have some mini hooks for catching fish. Okay, saving fish from depletion. So wonder why I put this here. It's supposed to be on the other slides. Make sure you know these zones. I'm not going to go over these zones here. Just go to the textbook chapter 8. Okay, go over the properties of these zones, like which one is the has the most nutrients, okay, and which one has the zero sunlight or a lot of sunlight, okay. Now, one thing I want to talk about here in the lake is that lake are usually a lack of nutrients because for two reasons. First, the surface water, it's warmer because it's closer to the air. And if you remember that density for warmer objects are less dense, so they tend to stay at the top. So there's a lack of convection, okay? And the second reason is the lack of upwelling. So even with wind, it's very hard for them to draw the bottom water up to the surface. Now, the bottom part of the water, it's going to be very nutritious because all the dead organic matter is going to sink all the way to the bottom. The bottom dwellers and the bacteria would convert the nutrients to usable nutrients. But if it doesn't go all the way to the top, then it's not going to be helpful for support vegetation growth or the fish growth near the top of the lake. Okay. We have individual transfer rights. It's the quota system that we talked about. That it assigned the quotas for different different species. What is it? Different quotas for different companies, fishing companies and fleets. The bigger the fleet, the more the quota. And they are able to trade, to lease their fishing rights. And the unintended consequence of this measure is that the smaller fishing companies and the fishermen that do not have a big fleet, they tend to get pushed out of the market or the job market, and they will sell their fishing rights to a bigger company, so creating a oligopoly scenario. And those fishermen or smaller fishing companies, they have no other choices but to fish illegally after they sold their fishing rights. So that's dangerous for the future, the sustainability of fishing. Okay. So we talk about the maximum sustainable yield and optimum sustainable yield. Okay, so maximum sustainable yield is that we focus on the point where we can capture the most fish. To capture the most fish, and in the ocean, to capture the most fish with the moderate fishing effort. But the flaw for this is that we are approximating that we are assuming that we know the total population of the fish. So therefore we have this graph, but we don't really know how many fish are in the ocean. And also it's extremely hard to tell how many is too many, because for fishermen, they would always want to have more fish so that they can make more money from catching more fish. So it's difficult to regulate. So therefore, we have this optimum sustainable yield, so that we will say this is where the fishing level is designated. So if there's any kind of illegal fishing that would still keep us in the safe region, we're not going to push the fishery practice into an overfished status. Okay, so make sure you do the practice test on Schoology, and with this video, and also the practice test, you should be ready for the test tomorrow. Okay, so that's it.